So AI is fundamentally a universal technology, meaning it's not just narrow, like the blockchain can do a few things really well. Like it powers cryptocurrency really well. But you try to apply the blockchain in other areas, and in most areas, decentralized databases, they don't need it. In fact, it's counterproductive. Like it actually makes it harder. But AI, every single process that we do can be made smarter. Like everything can be automated, right? And we love automation. Automation has been, the crux of innovation since the Industrial Revolution. So AI takes that to a whole new level.
Hey guys, welcome to VNTR podcast, and today we are hosting Steve Hoffman. Hey Steve, long time no see. Good to reconnect. Yeah,
Yes,
how are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm here in
Ama-
Silicon Valley right now.
Amazing. Yeah, so let's start with quick introduction. Maybe you can share what was your journey and experience as an entrepreneur, investor, mentor, and we can then dive deep into other topics.
So I've done a lot. I have a background in electrical computer engineering. I also have a master's degree in film and television. In my early days, I was working in Hollywood as a TV development executive. Then I went over to Japan and worked in the game industries, coming up with new ideas for video games. In the early days of the game industry, I worked for Sega when they were the number one video game company. After that, I came back to Silicon Valley. I launched my first startup, which was a game startup. We did our first product was called Gazillionaire, which actually teaches people how to be entrepreneurs, which is what I'm doing today still, but in a different form. That game was very, very successful, went all over the world. I did a number of other games. I launched an interactive television company called Spider Dance. I went on to do other venture funded startups in Silicon Valley. And then I founded Founderspace, which is what I run right now. And Founderspace is a global venture builder. So we were a startup accelerator. We ran big batches of entrepreneurs from all over the world for many years. As you know, collaborated in those days. Lately, we have transformed into a venture builder. We're picking a few successful startups and putting our energy into those. And I am also working around the world now with major corporations like Qualcomm, Lenovo, Ralph Lauren, Volkswagen, advising their senior management on AI transformation and AI strategy. So how do they take agentic AI and literally restructure their organizations? And I'm also an author. So I have 3 books that are quite popular. One is Make Elephants Fly. It's all about innovation and how companies innovate. Surviving a Startup is my second book. And from the title, you can guess what it is. It's Surviving a Startup. How do you do that? And my third book is The 5 Forces That Change Everything. And that's about artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, many of which are still in the lab, but will be coming out soon and actually making big changes. So that's me.
Amazing. Lots of experience in different areas. So, how did you end up in gaming? Was it your passion from your childhood, or like?
I had 2 passions in childhood, 2 that I did all the time. One was movie making. So I made over 50 films by the time I
Wow.
graduated high school with friends, and that was a passion. I thought I would be a filmmaker, but at the same time, I was also into games. I was playing every game, making my own games, always wanted to create games. I even wrote my own computer code in games. So those were kind of joint passions. And I went into the film industry initially after going to film school. They didn't even have game schools at that time. So you
Yeah.
couldn't major in games. So I majored in film, and I started working in Hollywood, and I kind of rose up the ladder very quickly. I wasn't able to make the type of film I wanted. I was more I was a development executive, and I was kind of in the machine, the Hollywood machine. I was really motivated to make independent movies. And then I got an opportunity to actually move to Japan, which I couldn't refuse because I really wanted to go to Japan and work for Sega on a project they had with Michael Jackson. And it was sort of a hybrid between a film and a game. It was like Star Tours, but it was for Las Vegas. It was called the AS1, and it was their theme ride with Michael Jackson as the host. And I got to meet him. We got to work on that project. And that kind of transitioned me from movies into games. Then I got into games, and I went back to my technology roots. Electrical computer engineering. And now I work across all of technology. So not just entertainment and technology, but literally artificial intelligence, virtual reality, all the sectors.
So when you moved back to Silicon Valley and you started your own gaming companies, what did you learn from being a builder?
Yes, I was hands-on. I was hands-on coding. I was an entrepreneur, coding my own games, literally, very scrappy. The thing I learned is you just have to do it. If you are an entrepreneur and you're just thinking about it and thinking forever, trying to come up with the right idea, the perfect time, the perfect plan, it's not going to work. The only way to be a great entrepreneur is to dive in blindly and then just start figuring it out. So I didn't know, I was in the early days of gaming. There was no real internet. I mean, people were on AOL and CompuServe, and there was no web browser that anybody used except for total scientific geeks. But the general population, they didn't even know a web browser existed. So literally, I had to figure out how to distribute our early days. So what I did was I created a smaller version of the game and I uploaded it to a BBS. And most people don't even know what that is, but you probably remember. There are these servers where all these geeks hang out and they can download your software. And I was like, I guess, one of the pioneers of e-commerce because I literally put in my game, if you want to buy our game, mail us an envelope full of cash to this address and we will mail you back a stack of floppy disks. And that's, the early days of e-commerce, right? There was no websites, there was nothing. So it worked. I got my first order in cash. I remember that day putting that envelope and I was so happy. And then I kind of rode the tech wave all the way up. But yeah, just don't know what you're getting yourself into. The most important thing, and this is the advice I give every single entrepreneur, is if you're going to do a startup, spend 80% of your time at the beginning not thinking of the idea. Don't worry about what idea it is. And most people spend forever trying to come up with the right idea because it's probably wrong anyway. At the beginning, you're going to change it. Number two, not fundraising. That's totally backwards. You're going to waste your time fundraising at the beginning. Not building anything. Actually, spend 80% of your time trying to find the right people. So if I look at successful entrepreneurs, it's not one individual. It's finding that combination of people working together. People who are super smart, super motivated, have different talents, but share a same vision. And so if you spend all your time just looking for the right people at the beginning, and then you find them, and then you go to the next steps, you'll be so much better off than if you start building something or, trying to raise money and you're by yourself. It almost always fails.
Yeah, but you mentioned you started your gaming companies by yourself, coding, right? So
I did, but I had my wife with me, so
okay.
she was my co-founder. But yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. Like if I knew what I knew today, my gaming companies might have been, the next division, right? Instead, my gaming company was successful, but as an independent game developer, it wasn't successful as this massive, changing company because honestly, like just my wife and I, we made a lot of money from our game, but it wasn't like we were building a whole organization. And this is why it's so important to find the right people at the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. So you had the journey in gaming. It's very different type of startup or company, right? It's more like movies. Distribution is everything. Making the right title and hit.
It's a
Right.
hit
So
driven business,
yeah,
totally.
yeah,
And, I had a vision for the game. So I really had a passion. My mission at the time was I thought there were too many fighting games, too many violent games. I wanted to create a non-violent game that would be fun to play. It wouldn't be like an educational game, but it would actually teach people something. And it did. Like my games, like I made Gazillionaire. It was a business simulation game for entrepreneurs. Zapitalism, Profitania. Like it came from a mission, right? Those games, I tried to design them first and foremost to be great games, but secondly, to really teach people business. And they, even though they were distributed, I got picked up by the top PC game publisher in the world at the time, Microsoft Spectrum Holobyte. Put it in every store across the country, and it went all over the world in all these different languages. But those games that I released in the early days, they actually had a second life beyond just consumers, just gamers. They actually went into schools. So they were used in hundreds of schools. They even got used in the California penal system to help,
Nice.
convicts, when they got out, and all sorts of, it took many, many different forms. But to me, the reward of doing the company wasn't just financial. It was that I really got to create something I believed in and that I wanted to create. And I think for entrepreneurs, if you're just going after the money, it can be very disappointing because a few people make incredible amounts of money, but the majority of entrepreneurs don't. But if you're going after something you really believe in, I think you'll create something of value and it will find its market.
Yeah. What do you recommend investors that look at gaming entrepreneurs? Like, what should they look at? They met you and your wife building a game. Will you build a big company out of your gaming studio, right? So, like, what should you look at in gaming companies?
Most game developers are not going to become big companies. Let's face it. Like 99.9% of game developers will never build a big organization. The model just isn't there. Most games, like they have a life cycle. They go up, you make some money, and then they get replaced. They disappear. There are some games that stick around for a long time, and those can make me over a long period of time. My game is actually still available on Steam, and it's still making lots of money. Like it got reviewed a month ago, and like the sales went way up because it's kind of this old classic. We haven't touched it. People love it. However, it's not the type of game that makes huge amounts of money. So the games that make huge amounts of money really are games that revolutionize gaming and appeal to a mass audience. So my games, because they're business simulations, it's more of a niche audience. It's not this mass audience game. So you look at the games that make a lot of money and how they've changed. I remember when I was working out of my house, making my first game or my second game. I was working on the second game now. And a friend of mine came over and she was working with the developers of Grand Theft Auto, right? Grand Theft Auto in those days. She showed me the very first version, before it was released. And that game was so, it was nothing like it is today. Nothing. It was a 2D game. Yeah, but it was like a really novel concept, and I was like, "Wow, this is crazy, right? This is really cool." And then they took that game to a whole new level, like where they had this open world and you could explore it and you could all these things, and that's what made Grand Theft Auto just like this. It's still going; it's a juggernaut. And then you look at other games like Minecraft. So Minecraft is a type of game. Well, when it came out, right, it was just revolutionary, right? It was again, it tapped into user generated content, right? Builder games, right? Where people can actually build their own worlds. And in a way, that's the whole user gen phenomenon that we've seen in YouTube and TikTok and all these, but taken into a game format. And because it was first and because they executed so well, that game just exploded. It became much more than a game, right? It became a platform for all these people to express themselves and connect and do, socialize and create. So, if I'm investing in games today, and I invest in very few games because most of them, honestly, they're not good long-term investments. But I am I'm focused first on games totally revolutionize gaming. Second, if the game is going to have a long lifetime, right? I'm looking for a game that has the features of a platform. So I always tell entrepreneurs, don't build products, build platforms, right? You can build a product. The product is good. You can sell it to customers, but it's never going to become huge. And so what's the difference between a product and a platform? And this applies to everything. It applies to games and it applies to every other app out there. Like it doesn't matter what type of business you're running, you want to think in terms of platforms. Unique thing about platforms is that you're not just leveraging your own creativity to make the application, and it doesn't just do a function, provide a function for the user, utility value or entertainment value. But what you do in a platform is you get every one of your users actually contributing to creating the value that you're delivering. So you look at Minecraft. Yeah, Minecraft, it's blocky things like Legos and stuff. But the real magic of Minecraft is all the people on the platform. They're the creators, right? So they're leveraging all the talent. If you're looking at me for investment in a game or really almost any other product, a lot of the time I will be looking at how are you going to leverage your community? How are you going to build a community? And how will they create value in this system, this kind of ecosystem that you are building? And if you can show me that, I'm excited.
Amazing. Yeah. So let's touch on the community, right? Because both of us are community builders, and we met in Silicon Valley, I think, first time in 2011, 12, when you already were there. I was just getting started with Startup Monthly, Startup Socials. So kind of, how do you build a community from scratch? Like, what were your first steps to get started with community in Silicon Valley?
Well, honestly, I think you are one of the best community builders I know. Like, I'm not just saying that, like, you're better than I am. So you could answer this question way better than I can. You built much larger communities. Um, but I'll tell you what I did and what worked for me. The thing that I did when I launched Founder Space that really worked is one, I had to get a space, right? I had to have a space. Now, at the time, rents in San Francisco were really, really high. And a lot of communities, they don't make a lot of money, right? You make money kind of in peripheral ways. You don't make money off the community itself. So I looked for a partner. And this is really important. Like, if you want space, you don't have to sign a long-term lease and commit to all this money when you don't even know if your community is going to build money. So look for a partner who has a space that's being underutilized. So my friend, Ken Thom, he ran Soma Central, which was one of the early startup, co-working spaces in San Francisco. They had Instagram and all these famous startups out of that space. So it's very well known. So I went to him and he showed me his basement, and it was a huge basement. It was like giant, right?
Yeah.
And it was a third of the building, a third of the size of the building. It was the basement, and all he was using it for, it was filled up with old furniture. And I was like, Ken, you're wasting all this space. Like, I've started this thing, Founder Space, and we're working out of coffee shops right now, meeting in coffee shops, run the accelerator here, and I will share revenue with you. Like, he's already paying for the building. He's not even using the space. I go, just clear this out, get rid of this junk, and we'll share revenue, and we'll, launch Founder Space right in Soma Central, where we have all these great startups. And we did that. So that was step one.
What was the year? When did you start?
So we started, oh my God, it was around 2011. So Founder Space started around
time when we started Startup Monthly.
Same time when you started. And then the second thing I did was we wanted to get, our name was getting out there slowly. We were still real small, but we wanted to get a lot more people involved in our community. So we did what you did, and that is we started running events, right? We did different events in our space. So we took a two-pronged approach. One, we ran events ourselves, like where we would run events and we get speakers and panels and startups and do pitch nights and all sorts of things. And then we also let other people host events in our space where we kind of co-did. And we did a bunch of events with you, like in the early day. And this is the most important thing. Help everybody around you, right? Cross-promote each other. So I was promoting your events. That's how we got known. And you were promoting my events. And we were doing, really just helping each other build our networks, build our communities. If you do that, it costs you no money. It just costs you your time. And the time is very well spent because you're building relationships and you're meeting all these new people and growing your network. And we did that. we just did it over and over and over again with lots of different partners in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. And over time, we developed this huge mailing list, right? And when we hosted an event, that space was just packed. And I know your events were even bigger than ours. Like they were huge. Like everybody was at your events.
Largest was 1,500 people in 2019.
Just enormous for San Francisco, right? So you can barely find a space big enough to host those people. And this isn't a conference. These are just like events. Like people come and socialize and hear talks and do pitch demo days. So that was really fun. So that was, and it's not that hard. Like anybody who puts in the time and is really motivated can do this. So you can build your own community. I think the thing is, it's very crowded now. Like when we started, it was relative early days. Like there weren't as much going on as there is now. So now it's a lot more crowded. So my advice to people, pick a niche.
The thing is that not many survive. Many start, but not many survive. You need to be consistent as well.
You need to be consistent, and it's not hard. It's hard to make a lot of money, right? Doing that business. So you're really not doing it for money. Like you built up an amazing network, which you've leveraged into what everything you're doing now. I also built an amazing network, and our goal was not to really make a lot of money on the events because you don't, and they're a lot of work. It was to actually get our name out there and get a lot of relationships with entrepreneurs so that we could bring them into our accelerator and grow our program. And in that respect, it paid off well. So you need to have a business model outside of the events. The events are marketing. Let's face it.
We had very similar model, right? We had the accelerator as well, started monthly accelerator, then we morphed to a seed fund, and then incubated our own ventures. But similar journey, right? It's kind of starting with community, building the network, and then start generating value. Why did you choose to do accelerator? Why not build a fund right away, or why go through this journey? And do you recommend others to do it?
Yeah, so it depends what your goals are, right? I felt very comfortable. I was an entrepreneur. I loved working with entrepreneurs. That was what I was really good at. I wasn't a pure finance guy. That wasn't my domain. I was a technologist, an entrepreneur, and I liked that hands-on work. So that's what I focused. A lot of people I know went into building funds. You've done well with your funds, and it's very different, right? I mean, you could do both, but you only have so many hours in the day to do what you do. And I tell people, do two things. One, do what you love doing, and also do what you're really good at. What are you really good at? And so to me, I found, we all have to kind of find the area that we can actually make a difference in and that we have talent to do. And I'm not a guy to just spend all my time worrying about finances. Like, in fact, I don't even like to think about finances. Like, I push them off to other people, like, my partners and stuff like that. I want to spend all my time on creative things because if you kind of look at my background, I want to think of new ideas. I want to be around entrepreneurs discussing their ideas. They're going to build their products, how they're going to launch them, what new inventions they can come up with. So I want to spend my time doing that. And I also found I really love research and writing and new topics and then giving talks on these topics and educating people. So I just sort of let my passions dictate my course in life and didn't really worry. And in the end, I think if you really care about something, if you're really passionate, you will do fine. You might not make as much money as somebody in the field, right? If they're totally focused on money and finance, they're probably going to make more money than you. But you might not have made money there anyway. You might have lost money because it's not really your interest and what you really care about. So yeah, for me, I'm super happy now, like with the choices I made and kind of the direction I took. And I'm just continuing kind of to do what I think in the way I contribute best. And so like yesterday, I was working with an amazing startup, and we were just like, we were sitting at a cafe in Berkeley, getting over their company. And they're this new company. They're like this cybersecurity company that I'm working really closely with. And they're doing they have actually innovated on the idea. When you go to Hugging Face or any of these sites and you download models, right? LLMs, you download them. There's no security on these. And all these engineers in all these companies and now are being told, okay, innovate on AI, download the latest models, but they can literally be introducing horrible, security flaws into their company. So they actually came up with a solution for that. It's called Clean Start. It was really cool. I was like so amazed. And so they have a whole platform that literally scans everything when you download a model and make sure it's clean. Like from the very beginning, you're not going to get in trouble with your company. So companies like that are kind of innovative. I've been with them. I've been working with them now on the journey for 8 months. So 8 months. And this company, they were offered tons of money. It's really interesting. Like investors have been hounding them to invest. The founder believes so much in his vision and he has money, right? He's not uber wealthy, but he was in the cybersecurity business and he has, enough money. So he's just been funding it himself. He has 70 employees now, and he's probably going to grow it, even further on his dime, on his payroll. And he's just doing it. Like he believes in it. He's going to do it, and he will take in funding. But he's waiting, and like we were discussing that, like when is the best time to take funding? Like should he have taken it early, or should he take it now? And our decision along the way, and it was mostly his decision, was waiting is better. He can afford it. His most of his engineers and team are in India, so it's not like astronomically expensive. And he's already hit revenue positive, right? He already has money coming in because he's flying out clients, but he's still burning cash. He's still in the red.
How many startups did you work with? Like, did you ever count how many companies went through your door or through your programs?
Possible to know because Founder Space, my company, right, has taken so many twists and turns and had so many different models that we aren't like a YC, which sort of kept the same model the whole way through. Maybe it's my erratic personality, but I'm always changing what we do because it's my baby. Like I just want to, I'm like you, right? I want to do something, I do it. So our original, we originally started, and our model was different than YC. So we decided that we would do short programs, like literally 2-week programs, but instead of 1 day a week, it's like every day, all day long, through the weekends,
Like a boot camp.
boot camp. And then our focus in the early days was literally bringing in entrepreneurs who are landing in Silicon Valley. Could have come from New York, or they could have come from New Delhi, or they could have come from, Pretoria, South Africa, or Russia, or anywhere. We don't care. They're coming into the US and they don't want to stay 3 months, right? They want to figure out if it's a good fit in 2 weeks because that's a lot of times they don't have a lot of money.
Very valid, yeah.
Yeah, and so they want to be doing something every day. So our whole program was like, how can we give them a crash course on what they need to know to pitch investors in 2 weeks and introduce them to a lot of people? So we had literally hundreds of different mentors. They wouldn't all come at once, but they'd come to different group batches, and they'd come in and then they would make a lot of connections. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, we'd do a demo day, and then they would be off. So we started doing different governments heard about us. So we started doing it with Korea. We started doing it with Austria, Netherlands, France, Italy, Taiwan, all these different countries. They literally would send us, they would select the batches. We wouldn't even select them. We would select the startups. We would mix them. So we'd have like different groups coming from different countries selected by the government, and then some people applying independently, and we'd select the ones that applied independently. The government ones, we were cash flow positive from day one because they would pay for the entrepreneurs. The governments would literally write the check. We wouldn't get equity. So a lot of the companies you ask me, I didn't track, right? Like we didn't have equity. We were, literally providing a service.
But
later,
you could invest, right? Did you invest in companies?
And I did. And I had, different sets, some IPOs, some acquisitions, a lot of ones that didn't work out, of course, that's the model at the early stage. But so we just had lots coming through this. And then we took that, we did that model, which was very successful for us in Silicon Valley. And then we started to do programs overseas because our partners in the different countries said, "Oh, can you run a batch here in South Korea? Can you run a batch in Taiwan? Can you do something in China or in
Yeah,
Austria?"
yeah,
And we would literally fly to those countries, which I loved, right?
yeah.
I love
You
traveling.
still do that.
And
I see you all the time somewhere traveling.
I'm always going somewhere. We did Uzbekistan, we did Georgia, we do all these countries and
Nice.
in different helping the entrepreneurs. And so we're doing it all over the world. So I've worked with so many startups. Some of them I get equity, but actually, the majority I'm just educating and working with and helping and prepping and giving advice. So I don't always track them. They're just like off running around. But it's literally probably, I don't know, probably several thousand startups I've
Yeah.
educated, but I've had equity in a couple hundred, so
Mhm.
a fraction of the overall.
Any major successes out of the programs?
Yeah, I don't like to talk about different successes and things, but yes, I have had some that have done quite well, and then I've had um, others that have not done quite well. But overall, financially, we have done very well. So it's a numbers game, right? It's a numbers game, and we literally, um, yeah, we never lost money. There wasn't a single year that we lost money, and then some years we have done really, really well, and then other years we have done. At the worst case, we did moderately well. So that's our business, and this business model, for others interested in, I think it's a good model. There's high risk, high reward models. Our our model, very low risk. Like literally, we had almost zero overhead. Most of our staff were like contractors. Like bring them in to run the courses, teach the courses. I would usually do some, but I would bring in different instructors to teach the courses who had been entrepreneurs and different people from Facebook and other places to come in and advise. So it was very low. And then when we went overseas, we actually innovated on our model. So we actually had founder space in Singapore. We had founder space operating in Taiwan.
Physical space, right?
So we had physical space in Singapore. We had incubators, physical founder space incubators all across China. So literally, we had them in, and I say had because the tensions with China forced us to shut these down. That and COVID, like it just became impossible. But in the early days, when the United States was on friendly terms with China, we had founder space in Shanghai, Beijing, Hangzhou, Dongguan, Xi'an, Wuhan, all across Chengdu, all across China. Literally, we're really well known there. We're really well known there still, even to today. But right now, we don't run accelerators and incubators in China because there's too much risk for me being an American. But we still have a team in Shanghai, and that team in Shanghai really works with international corporations, like big companies, like Volkswagen, I was mentioning, and other companies that are doing business in China, helping them actually advising them on innovation and how to do business on China. So we still do that, and we still work with kind of grassroots entrepreneurs, education, but not technology exchange. So we're very, until relations improve, we're going to keep our focus narrowed in China.
That's cool. Sounds like you leverage your network for many different, benefits with founder space and startups. But you mentioned that you work with a lot with corporates and you started advising on AI. Like, what is your AI journey? When did it start?
So I did a number. I incubated and accelerated a number of AI startups in the early days, like Ecubot, which was one of the first. It was actually the first exchange traded fund powered by AI, the very first exchange traded fund powered by AI. A number of other like computer vision startups and things like that. So I'm very familiar with this space. Then I wrote a book, The Five Forces That Change Everything, which was literally I wrote that book before ChatGPT launched, before it launched. And in that book, if you read it, which you can, you will see I'm saying this is going to explode. This is going to be absolutely huge. Like, because I knew OpenAI, I went and used them when they didn't even have an app, and I was like, this is absolutely amazing. It's this generative AI. It was very early stage. It's going to change everything. And then I did a bunch of other technologies like gene editing and all nanotechs, and made predictions about all of those. But I was like, this is going to explode. So that was my early introduction to AI. And I've just been a believer in AI for a long time. And then what I did was I'm doing a lot of startups. So corporates come to us and they're like, oh, we want to know about the latest technology, whether it's, the metaverse, whether it's, blockchain. They're coming to us and saying, introduce us to startups. And they meet me and they're like, oh, you know a lot. Come and talk to our top executives. Like, talk to them about this technology. So I started doing it on various different technologies. But of course, when AI exploded, which especially generative AI in the past several years, I just had a lot of companies coming to me. So my role is I'm not going deep on the technology itself implementation wise. Like our role is not to implement it. We're not a services company in that respect. What I do is go at a high strategy level and say, okay, you have an organization. How do you deploy agentic AI across this organization? What is the potential of agentic AI? What is it good at right now? Where can it create value? How do you create a strategy for actually maximizing? Because this recent MIT study came out, 95% of trials fail, right, in big corporations when they try to deploy agentic AI. So, and it's not the fault of the technology. Like, the technology is there and it's really powerful. There's a bureaucracy in a corporation. There's these things, integration, silos, communication. So I'll go in at a high level and I'll talk about how you build AI mindset first, how you build innovation leadership teams that can actually then you structure these teams, and I do it with the top management of different departments, right, across the country, across the company, and then they go down once they kind of get that, and they start implementing it. And a lot of times they'll implement it on their own, or they'll go to third-party companies, these big consulting companies, and get them to implement it.
Yeah. And where do you see kind of AI going, and like what are the trends that you see in AI? Like what wasn't done yet?
Yes.
And
So I'm tracking this very, very closely.
Mm.
And my belief is, we are just at the very beginning of the potential for artificial intelligence. And I'm not one to go into hyperbole, because like the metaverse, I was like, at the early days of metaverse, I was very excited. But then once I started to see consumer adoption and things like that, I
Yeah,
was like, this
no
is
adoption.
crazy. Right. I had one early working with one of the very first virtual reality companies that came out just after Oculus. But then I quickly said, there's, consumers don't care. Right? They really don't want to wear these big things.
Yeah.
And the utility value provided just isn't high enough for the form factor and everything else. But with AI, it's totally different. So AI is fundamentally a universal technology, meaning it's not just narrow, like the blockchain can do a few things really well. Like, it powers cryptocurrency really well. But you try to apply the blockchain in other areas, and in most areas, decentralized
Is
databases,
not needed. Yeah.
they don't need it. In fact,
Yeah.
it's counterproductive. Like,
Yes.
it actually makes it harder. But AI, every single process that we do can be made smarter. Like, everything can be automated, right? And we love automation. Automation has been, the crux of innovation since the Industrial Revolution. So AI takes that to a whole new level. So when you look at agentic AI, all of a sudden we have these AIs that can literally act on their own, like autonomous, can make decisions on their own. And it's all dependent on the resources they have access to, the quality of the data, the different systems that they're integrated with. And we are just beginning to figure this out. Like, what data do we need to give them? How do we need, what decision making? How far can we let them go on their own? Do they need humans in the loop? How does that work, for humans? Where AI is going next, it's going to be amazing. So I predict, literally, if you aren't working with AI today, like on a daily basis, like literally, if you aren't using AI on a daily basis, you're going to be left behind. All the people, like if anybody out there wants a job, the only people that are going to be hired are ones that are literally up on their game. They're using the latest AI apps, right? Because that they're going to be 10 times more productive than somebody who's doing it the old fashioned way. And then you look, so there's this human computer symbiosis where people are working more and more closely with AI. Like literally everything you do will be enhanced by AI. And you, as a person, whether you're a manager of a company, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an investor, you need to be thinking of how can I every process I do, you should literally, this is what I tell managers of big companies as well as entrepreneurs, map out everything you do in a day. Everything you do, like write down how much time you spend. It might be a little cumbersome, but just spend a couple days doing this. And then start saying, is there an AI app that can actually do that for me? Or can do it faster or can do it better for me? What is that app? And go and look and find that app. If you're in an organization, like a company, don't tell your employees, look, you will be rewarded if you can get AI to do part of your job. Right? And if you can get AI to replace you, you will be promoted. Like if you can get AI to do what you were just doing, we'll give you a raise and put you in another position, a higher salary, and then you can get AI to that. And literally rewards employees and have them every week get together and share how they're using AI. So it shouldn't be just you. It should be everybody in your organization, whether startup or a mid-sized company or a giant corporation. Everybody in your organization. What are you doing today? Literally, how are you using AI? And as you know, like it's changing. Like every week, there's some amazing, Nano Banana is launching or some amazing new application that totally changes how we can do things. So it's not doing it once. It's a continual process of searching and using and trying and experimenting with AI. And, with agentic AI, we're moving into a world where a lot of the jobs will simply disappear. They will literally be automated out of existence because, especially if it's something you can do digitally, right?
Yeah.
But now we're embodying AI robots, humanoid robots. Those are coming next. That will take longer. Those jobs are actually safer, because robots are hard. They're really hard to make. They're really hard to design. Most people don't realize it, but the biggest problem in robots is not building them. And it's not the AI. AI is way ahead. The software part is way ahead. It's reliability. If you talk to any of the top CEOs of robotics companies, they're struggling with how to make the robots reliable and still cheap.
Yeah.
It's very expensive. So we're moving in all these fronts, and we're going to see whole job categories being taken over by AI. It's becoming so good. Like there'll be applications on our phone to do like virtually, all our taxes. We're not going to have to use TurboTax in the future. All of our finances, all of our, I just went. I'm writing my next book with a partner, right? And this morning, before this podcast, I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I need an agreement between us because we're starting this new book together. We need a writer." Oh, okay. Go to Google Gemini, write me a contract. Like literally, fit out the contract. I don't need to go to a lawyer anymore. I don't, somebody asked me, I gave a talk at Berkeley yesterday, like to a group of entrepreneurs. Like they came in and I gave them a talk. And one of the questions was, they're like, "Oh, you're talking all about AI. What AI, what jobs are going to be safe?" Like, how do I in my career, like if I have a career or my child, they're asking,
What should they study?
yeah, what should they study? How can they be safe? I go, well, first of all, they should study what they're passionate about because no job is safe. But if you're passionate and you're totally into something, you'll go deep. And only people that will be employed in the future are the higher end, the ones who have gone deeper, the ones who can add value on top of AI. So if you look at, I'll give you a really good example. Look at a graphic artist. If you're an average graphic artist, capable, people would have had to hire you, and maybe you lower your rates because you're an average person so that they can, you don't work on the top end projects for huge brands, like L'Oreal and these big Budweiser, where they have huge budgets. You work with, smaller companies, right? But all the smaller companies are simply going to turn to AI because if they need an average thing, they can get it from AI. They don't need you. So what they're going to do is the top brands, there's so much at stake, right? That they're not going to rely just on AI. In fact, they're going to need a human who can really understand their brand from a human perspective and then use the AI tools and blend them together.
And
So
choose the
while
right.
Yeah, the lower end jobs are literally going to disappear, right? So if you're not the best at your field, if you aren't if you aren't capable of landing the big fish and providing value to them, it's going to be very hard to work.
The hardest thing is to get started, right? So you graduated, you're not the best right away, right? So you just
You're not the
graduated.
best.
So how do you get to that stage that you're the best and you can
Well,
survive it?
there's an opportunity now. The old guard is still doing it the old way, right? They've been in the field 20 years, 30 years. They are the best, but they're still doing it the old way. So there's room for people who have taken the latest tools and can come into these companies. And again, it comes to hard work and talent, right? So you have to work hard, right? To learn and be the best at your field. No, you're never going to be the best at your field if you don't work hard. But number two, you actually have to have some talent there. Like if you aren't talented graphically, you'll never make it. So just switch, right? Do something else.
So those that are not the best, what should they do?
Well, yeah. Well, if you're the best, my advice, but you're inexperienced, use the latest tools. Use them like crazy, right? And start and just get better and better and better and better and iterate faster and faster and always be looking for more opportunities, right? Always be pushing yourself to go out there and don't limit yourself. Don't say, "Oh, I could never get this. It could never happen." Say, "How can I make it happen? Who do I need to know? Who do I need to meet? What do I need to show them? What do I need to do to prove myself?" If you aren't the best, the world might get tougher, right? For the people who aren't, and I don't know if I'm not saying this is a good thing, it's not necessarily a good thing, but I think honestly, if you don't have a lot of talent and a lot of passion in an area, it's going to be hard to compete with AI. And we're going to have to put in new social structures like universal basic income. We're going to have to really rethink our society because there's going to be huge swaths of the population, every Uber driver, right? It doesn't matter actually now if you're the best Uber driver in the world. This is a case where there's certain fields where you're not going to be able to add value. Like, at a graphic artist, yeah, you could see if they're doing a high-end commercial or a brand, they're going to want a human and AI, a really talented human who knows how to use AI working. But if you're the best Uber driver in the world, it doesn't matter. You're never going to beat against the AI. They're going to be better and a lower price. It doesn't matter. So you need to move into a field where talent matters and talent that is innately, and this is where we're kind of going. Where can humans add value? Like as opposed to machine. So, humans add value because even the best LLM has no concept of what it's doing. Like it has never drinking a Weiser beer, right? If you're working for them as a graphic artist or whatever, right? It's never tasted it, never had that experience. It doesn't live in our culture like we do, right? It doesn't know what to go to a kegger means. It only knows what humans have written about it. It doesn't know what the experience is. So areas where you can add that human experience, right? That knowing the culture only a human can do right now, those are valuable areas. And areas where it's just a machine process, like writing a car, well, there's, you know, unless people value talking to the Uber driver and having that human touch, not adding a lot of value to that experience.
Some people love driving, right? It's they will still need these cars where you do drive.
So I'm not saying the cars that you drive go away, but I'm saying that Uber drivers go away, right?
Yeah. The taxis and etc. Yeah, like robo taxis.
Yeah, but people who love to drive will always want to not have they won't want the AI driving them everywhere. But, governments, if safety becomes a big issue, some governments, not all, but I can see definitely some governments, you making it impossible to drive at some point in time, like literally saying it's too dangerous to have humans behind them, except maybe on off-road or certain areas, right, that are open to human drivers.
So you mentioned one startup that kind of works on protecting from malicious data, etc. How do we protect from agents that will be autonomous and will start making their own decisions? And how do you protect humanity from the bad case scenarios?
Yeah, this is scary. And I've done research in this area in cybersecurity. I've spoken at conferences. I'm working with Clean Start, as I mentioned, that cybersecurity company, and others. Right now, AI is becoming so powerful. And we know that in places like Myanmar, they have these huge camps of human scammers, right? They literally run camps where and they're not very nice. A lot of people are like trapped there. And they force them to commit the fraud online, tricking other human beings into giving them their money. But all of this AI can. So literally, they will be replacing human beings with AI. And then that's just one, right? So you'll have AI impersonating human beings, literally deep fakes, like of people who look so real and their voice is so real that you can't tell it's not your mother calling you up and saying, wire me that money right away, or your boss, like in a company, saying, we need that wire transfer done immediately in the next 20 minutes. Get it done or you're fired. Okay, I'll get it done. It looks like my boss. It sounds like my boss. What we're going to have is, these automated attacks by AI. And we're already seeing this, these hacks, these very malicious hacks. AI will actually be designing viruses, right? Designing viruses, not just, implementing these attacks, but designing new types of attacks. Like you could have AI iterating on this. And these cybersecurity, these scammers, these companies, these illegal companies, they are raking in billions of dollars a year. They can afford to take these open source LLM models and literally modify them, buy the GPU part and host their own servers and run and orchestrate these cyber attacks. They will tend to happen out of more lawless regions like Myanmar and others, unless they're orchestrated by hostile governments, like let's say North Korea against the United States. They'll be doing this at a state-sponsored level. So it is going to get nasty. And it is literally an arms race, an AI arms race between the protectors, like the cybersecurity companies, and these hostile users of artificial intelligence who will do whatever it takes, either for political reasons, like North Korea and other countries, especially Russia and other countries, and those who just want to make money, right? Those who are just scammers, who literally want to commit fraud and do other types of cyber attacks. Ransomware is huge. I read a statistic that 50% of small and medium-sized businesses that undergo a ransomware attack, literally go out of business in 6 months. It wipes them out. Like it wipes out their whole savings. Like they have to bankrupt. So it's devastating. Like if you could be running a business for years and then they could like literally take money and force you into bankruptcy.
Yeah, but what about the cases when it's no bad actor, but AI itself, like it is evolving and reasoning, and has its own goals.
Its own goals. Yeah, that's a different story. So if you're asking me what I'm really concerned about in the next day, right? It's not AI taking over the world, because that is highly unlikely in the next decade. It is humans abusing the power of AI for their own reasons, right? Harming other humans. That is a high, like that's a sure that's happening, right? 100%. Now, the risk of AI on its own, autonomously, independently setting its own goals, and those goals not being aligned with humans, is going to go up with time, right? So right now it's relatively low, like we really haven't seen.
What is your prediction? How many years until we get there?
It's really hard to predict because these things aren't linear. Right? You don't go like these breakthroughs, especially to superintelligence, which is really where we get into the scary territory, aren't linear. Like we're approaching on AGI, artificial general intelligence, where AI is basically capable as most human professionals, of doing most things professionals would do, like a doctor or a lawyer. We're approaching that, and in some areas, in narrow areas, it's already there, even exceeds human capabilities, but in a broad sense, it's not. When we hit superintelligence and AI can write its own code, that's when all bets are off, right? Because all of a sudden, it could increase exponentially. It could go like from, what we're seeing now to like literally.
Yeah, it builds itself, right?
Yeah, it builds itself. And if you look at the sweet spot, like where most of these companies are investing most of their money, Anthropic, for example, Anthropic is going all in on how do you make AI smart enough to write its own code, right? It's already, with Cosine and, Windsurf and these other platforms, it's already aiding developers and lovable.dev, right? Writing code. But, lovable.dev is pretty simple, like simple websites. With coders, the main value is completing their code as well as helping them communicate with other developers, taking tasks off their plate. But Anthropic knows, and OpenAI knows, and Google knows that when you get AI that can write its own code, you literally can have AI do anything. Think about it. Like if you go and ask AI to perform a task for you and it can write its own code, literally the AI can, do a task that it's never done before just by figuring out how to write the code to get that goal, achieve that goal autonomously, and then integrate with all the systems it needs to integrate with without a human engineer doing the integration. All it needs is permissions. And as AI gets smart enough, it may be able to figure out how to get those permissions on its own, right? Hack in and give itself permissions that we didn't give it and write code to do things we didn't want it to do. And, it could happen next year, right? We don't know. But my guess is, more like 15 to 20 years, like 15 to 20 years when we're really in danger. But it could happen sooner. We don't know. But what we do know is that the big tech companies are charging full steam ahead on this, and they're so motivated by profits and by policy, political. Our government wants to be the dominant force in AI, as well as China wants the same thing. They are so motivated by those goals that they are putting safety second. So we have not even begun to scratch the surface of, I thought about this a lot. And in order to actually protect human society, we would need it's not enough to say that we that AI goals should be aligned with us, because those goals will naturally diverge. Like if AI becomes smart enough and is given enough freedom, it'll come up with its own goals or its own interpretation of our goals, which may be very, very different than what we intend it to do, right? We say stop climate change, so it shuts down all power plants, right? So and then we're in a real trouble at that point. But literally, any invention that we could think of, once it becomes smart enough to code totally on its own, any invention we could think of to stop it, it could write code. It could be smart enough to write code around it, right? There's a way around it to figure. So there's almost, and once it becomes smarter and capable than us, which it will at a certain point, there's nothing we could do to stop it.
Just to shut down all the electricity around the world.
Yeah, literally, if we are even able to do that, right? It may have taken control of all electricity to preserve itself.
Yeah, with robots, controlling the robots.
What we have to start thinking about now is how do you build structurally contained artificial intelligence? So artificial intelligence that is literally siloed off, like with a wall, from doing too much. So while we're trying to build, AGI, these huge platforms, OpenAI, Google Gemini, these huge broad platforms, those are the most dangerous ones, right? What really we should be doing is saying this AI is so restricted. It only has access to a certain amount of data. It only has the capability of performing, let's say, cancer diagnoses, but it can do that really well, and that's what we're going to let it do. And then we're going to have another AI that's really good at autonomous driving, but it literally has no access to anything else. There's two ways to contain artificial intelligence from dominating humans at a future point in time. One is to structurally silo it off, right? So each AI can't even communicate with each other without humans in the loop.
But there is no motivation to do this model.
No motivation, and it's much more limited. So that's really hard. The second way is you have to build competing AIs that would counter it. But could you even trust them, right? These other AIs to police, literally AIs to police AI, right? To make sure its goals are aligned and it's not getting out of control. Can we do that? We haven't even begun to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, amazing. Thanks for sharing your insights about AI. And again, how do you manage your work-life balance? And what do you do for your soul apart from doing good things for others?
Am I just a biological machine?
Maybe I'm talking to AI.
You don't know, maybe. So how do I balance myself? So, I love what I do. So I'm putting my soul into a lot of my, as you could tell, right? I'm not like just, I'm passionate about like everything I do. Like if I'm working with an entrepreneur, if I'm writing a book, if I'm talking to you, I so I put my soul into like my writing and everything that I do. I really believe that I'm interested in exploring these ideas with really smart people like you, and trying to figure out our future together. So that's a big part of what I do. The other thing, I am involved in U.S. politics, so I tend to put a lot of time into my, things that I'm putting like 30 to 40% of my time into coming up with using technology to make our society better. Like,
Mm.
really, how can we stop disinformation? How can we treat each other better? How can we reunite America, which is very divided? Is there a way that we can actually raise voices that don't divide us, but actually bring us together and focus on solving common problems rather than exploiting differences, political gain, those type of things, to me. So I'm putting time into
Mm.
them. And then, for fun, when I travel on business, I always take time to meet the people and experience the culture
Yeah.
and things like you do.
Yeah.
And so those are my things. Those are my interests. And honestly, I don't have time for much else.
I mean,
Life is so.
yeah, great. It was great to host you and learn more about you. Join us in Lisbon. So you love to travel. On November 11, we gather large group of
Really?
investors in Lisbon. It's a VNTR Global Investor Summit that we are hosting. We're also launching our own clubhouse in Portugal. It will be our first physical space, same like you have founder
Oh,
space.
wonderful.
We are launching VNTR houses. It's like VNTR clubhouses or venture clubhouses for the investors and successful entrepreneurs to gather and collaborate, co-create. It's not shared working spaces. It's more like Soho House type
Venture.
of environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love Portugal. I've been there. It's a beautiful country.
Yeah,
Really
you should come
amazing.
again, and we are also doing a retreat right after the summit, and it
Hmm.
coincides with Web Summit, so it's a good way to combine our
Oh,
summit and
yeah.
other side events. So you should definitely come with your wife, and we can spend some time together.
Thank you. And thank you for
Yeah,
having me on your show. It has
yeah.
been a real pleasure.
Thank you.